and let us begin. Right, so today I am talking about Themis, who is a goddess fairly near to my heart at the moment. So if I show you this image, some of you may have seen it. So this is a still from a video that I made that is available on the Beyond the Palette website. It's actually available on a section of the website called Beyond the Palette Television, BTP-TV. You can get to it via beyondthepalette.co.uk, and then you'll see the option there to go to Beyond the Palette Television. And this video is the first in a series all about Western art, kind of working through from almost the beginning. Obviously we have cave paintings before this, but you know, pretty near the beginning, from classical antiquity all the way up through to modern art and contemporary art. So that's the plan, at least. So this is the first video that I've posted. It's called Made in Marble. See what I did there? Made, M-A-I-D. And it's, as this young lady says, she's very, very excited because the whole premise is that she's a young Roman girl, hence the togas, and she is having her head crafted onto an ancient Greek statue, which sometimes was a thing. I haven't just completely made that up. That sometimes did actually happen. And the statue that she's having her head sort of, I was going to say grafted onto, that's completely the wrong, really, that's not really, that gives you completely the wrong impression. The idea was that the sculptor would sculpt a bust of her head and place it on the top of the statue. And the statue was believed and is believed to be that of Themis, who, as she announced excitedly, was or is the goddess of law and order. So here is the statue without me playing behind it. There you go. So this is the statue. It's from the, oh my God, I've just forgotten, from the 3rd century or 4th century BC, and it's in the Met in New York. Really, really beautiful, beautiful statue. So watch Made in Marble to find out a little bit more. But Themis, so who was Themis apart from the goddess of law and order? Well, she goes all the way back. She's one of the first goddesses. Her parents, though, go really, really all the way back. So this is a floor mosaic that was found in a villa in Sassoferrato, Sassoferrata in Italy, central Italy. Probably dates to about the 3rd century BC, so we're going back quite a long way, and it was in a private villa. And this floor mosaic depicts Themis's father, who's kind of standing with this sort of circle around him, which is kind of a sort of symbol of eternity. Basically, it's actually got signs of the horoscope all the way around it. So her father was Uranus, and her mother, who is lying on the ground looking up at Uranus, is Gaia, who was the primordial goddess of the earth, and Uranus was the god of the sky. And anyway, so they got it together and they had 12 children, one of whom was Themis, and all of those children were, they became known as the second order of divine beings, and so they were the 12 Titans. So Themis was a Titan. Now I was going to say this mosaic is her parents in happier times. She had a bit of a traumatic childhood, Themis. Yeah, so I was going to say that they were in happier times, but actually, just judging by the look on both of their faces, I don't think either of them look particularly happy at this point either, but it definitely does get worse for them. It gets worse because Uranus at one point and not Themis and Gaia, they have this very unattractive, deformed child that Gaia loves absolutely. She's his mother, Uranus, so isn't having any of it, and so he makes her hide this child like basically in the depths of the earth, which is kind of like actually putting him back in her stomach, because it's a kind of it blows your mind, this concept. But Gaia, Mother Earth, is a goddess, but she is also the earth. Okay, blows your mind. So anyway, so she got really, really, really cross with him, and and her resentment and her hatred and her anger was really festering. And so she went to her children in turn, individually, and she said, "Would you please help me to kill Uranus?" Now, Themis, she was always, right from the get-go, really, really level-headed, really wise, could kind of see a little bit what might happen, she could understand the consequences of things. And so she said, no. She said, "Mom, that's the worst. You've had some pretty bad ideas, but that's the worst idea, Mum, that you've ever had in your life. I'm not helping you to kill Uranus." Unfortunately, her brother Kronos was not so wise, and he was like, "Yeah, if I kill him, then I can become like the king, essentially, the leader." And so he does kill Uranus. And do you remember this story? Do you remember what's coming next? Kronos chops off his father Uranus's genitals, and he throws them into the sea. And who is born? Remember this all the way back, oh my God, like years ago. No, not years ago, but about a year ago. Venus. So this is how Venus is born. So this just is a quick reminder, and you can go back and watch the 11's episode that is all about Venus. So this is Botticelli's beautiful, beautiful Birth of Venus from around about 1484, 1485, that is now in the Uffizi in Florence. It's so beautiful, this image. So anyway, so yes, Uranus and Gaia kind of split. And then, of course, we have the moment that Kronos, who's then overthrown Uranus, then he gets too powerful, and he has also heard a prophecy, and so one of his children then overthrows him. Now, do you remember this story? So this is all a little bit of violence, all Themis's family background. I bet they had crazy, crazy Christmases and family dues. So do you remember this one? So in turn, Kronos, who's overthrown Uranus, is then overthrown by Zeus. And this, I've talked about this many times. This is an image by Goya that he painted on the dining room in his home. Excellent. Of Kronos devouring his children because he ate them all, and then Zeus eventually made him vomit them all up, and they became sort of Zeus, and then his brothers and sisters, all the big gods and goddesses like Demeter and Poseidon and Hades and so on. In the meantime, so all this madness is going on in her family. In the meantime, though, lovely Themis, she is keeping a complete level head. She's watching all this and just thinking, I wouldn't have advised anyone to have done any of this. And so she gets this huge reputation for being so wise, but also for being able to see what might happen in the future if certain actions are taken. And so when people or gods went to the Oracle at Delphi, and you've heard me talk about the Oracle of Delphi, really, really famous. So when people went to the Oracle of Delphi, it wasn't just a kind of an old lady or whoever you imagine speaking. It was 3 specific gods that were thought to have been speaking through the oracle. One of those gods was Apollo. The other was the goddess Gaia, so the earth mother, Gaia, Themis's mother. And the third one was Themis herself. Sometimes maybe all 3. So Themis was sort of, came to be also one of the voices of the Oracle at Delphi. And just as a quick tangent, I was reading about this, and I was reading Stephen Fry, who says that the word enthusiastic. So when the gods spoke to you, they would enthusios. And also when they spoke through Apollo or Themis or Gaia, that was enthusios, so it was the word, which is where we get the word enthusiastic, which means like literally to be possessed by a divine being. Cool, huh? So this is an image though of Themis holding a cup and a laurel leaf. It's on the side of a kylix, or a drinking cup, and she is talking to King Aegeus on this cup, and he has gone to the Oracle at Delphi, and Themis has told him his prophecy. The thing is, in this story, and it is kind of a whole different story, which would deserve its own episode maybe at some point, but she's so obscure. The Oracle is always quite obscure, and this one was no exception. So she's so obscure that King Aegeus he goes home and he's like, I have absolutely no idea what she was talking about. So he goes and sees a friend who he knows is pretty good at interpreting the oracle, and the friend's like, oh yeah, okay, and then the friend gets Aegeus really drunk and asks his daughter to seduce their guest. So Aegeus sleeps with his friend's daughter, and basically the child that she then bears as a result of this night is a guy called Theseus, who has a whole load of other adventures. And as I say, it's a whole complicated story. But I love the fact that he goes to the oracle and she's like, oh yes, this and there's something about a wine bag not being open. I can't even remember. And he's like, yeah, no idea. Here she is again, perhaps, hopefully being a little bit more help. So here she is again. I'm sorry about the quality of this image. I couldn't find a better resolution image. This is on the side of a sort of a vase type shape thing. This is from the 4th century BC. The cup was from the 5th century. So all pretty old stuff. So here she is in a kind of, it's a bit of a cozy family gathering, actually, in many respects. So in the center of this image is Zeus. And Themis is seated, as we're looking at the image, over to the left-hand side. So she's there in the sort of the black cloak with her hand up. She's clearly speaking, and Zeus is clearly listening to her. And then just above Themis is Hermes, the winged messenger. To the other side of Zeus, there's another little kind of angel-y type thing. That's a little Nike. Another little winged messenger of the gods. And then over to the right is Athena. So I said a bit of a family gathering. Well, yes. So Athena is Zeus's daughter from his first marriage to Metis. Now I know what you're thinking. His first marriage? I thought Zeus was married to Hera. Oh yeah, but he was married to Metis, and then he had wives 2, 3 and 4, actually, before he got married to Hera eventually. And so Metis is Athena's mother, and if you recall as well, I've done a whole video on Athena. Athena was born out of the top of Zeus's head. Excellent. So she's his daughter. Then Themis is, if you think about it, she is actually Zeus's auntie. Would that be right? Yes, because her because her sister is Rhea and her brother is Kronos, who then got married and produced Zeus. So she is his auntie, but she's also possibly at this point his wife, because Themis was actually wife number 2 to Zeus. Now, this is quite probably the most sensible and normal relationship that Zeus has ever had in his life. He really valued Themis. He really valued her mind and her wisdom, so much so that, as you can see in this image, she was often called to give him her good counsel. So she's often to be seen sitting next to him, kind of offering her advice. And you know what? Her advice worked. She was really, really good at it. And then, you know what? Maybe at some point he just thought, oh my God, this woman's amazing. I just can't live without her. And so he thought this. Themis was already gone. He actually turned her into a fly and ate her, which is why Athena came out of the top of his head. But as I say, different story. So he was available in a godlike way to marry Themis. So yes, he thought he couldn't live without her, married her. Until then, he could live without her and divorced her and went on to marry someone whose name sounds like an enemy, but it isn't. Hang on a minute, I've got it written down here. What was her name? Mnemosyne, who gave birth to the Muses. And then he married Leto, who was the goddess of kind of childbearing, and she was very, very demure and very lovely and very soft and gentle and kind, and clearly not quite up Zeus's street. He maybe needed something a little bit more challenging, and that's exactly what he got when he married Hera, who we kind of know today as his consort, as the queen of the gods, also known to be incredibly jealous and somewhat deranged, quite frankly. So he is married, he marries and divorces Themis. So, she actually is quite important in terms of the lives of the gods. She also gives birth with Zeus to 2 sets of twins. One set, the first set, are the Horai, who are the seasons. Later on, a 4th one joined them, but originally there was only 3. And then she gave birth to the Moirai, or the Moirai, who were the Fates. And they, whereas the Horai, lovely young girls, all they did was kind of just make sure that time passed in an orderly manner. The Moirai were often depicted as old crones, old witches, and they were in charge of measuring out lifespans, essentially. So one of them would spin a golden thread, and the other and another would measure it out, and then the third would cut it at some point. Now, Zeus could actually intervene if he wanted to, so he could decide that someone deserved to live less or someone deserved to live longer, but basically that was their job. So that was what Themis was doing. But there aren't so many paintings of her, really, because I guess she just got on with things. She didn't romp around in the nude. She didn't she didn't get involved in kind of nefarious schemes. Like, there was basically no real narrative that made her particularly interesting to artists. That said, of course, there are images, or maybe not of course, but there are images, representations of Themis all over the place, everywhere at the top of the Old Bailey and most courthouses, because she has become the symbol of justice. So her wisdom kind of became the divine wisdom, and she became the symbol of law and order and justice. So the Romans called her Justitia. And I'm going to end with this image of justice. So you can see just at the bottom of the image there, Justitia instead of Themis. So this, by now we're sort of channeling Romans, but this is Raphael. So this is from probably somewhere around 1508, and it is an interesting image, well, for two reasons. The first reason is that it was only recently found. It was uncovered during restorations in the Vatican, in the Hall of Constantine in the Vatican. Raphael had painted frescoes and so on, and it was always thought that he had done some experimentation with oil paints in this room, and indeed during the restoration this image and another one was found. So this is thought to be by Raphael, and it is indeed in oil. So it's quite extraordinary. The other extraordinary thing is that Justice is holding her scales, which is very, very normal. So she's got the scales in her left hand. She is enthroned, which is also very normal. She doesn't have a blindfold on. Sometimes she was depicted with a blindfold on to show her impartiality. But instead, what she's got an ostrich. Yeah. And why not? Actually, the ostrich in Renaissance times, randomly, in my opinion, became an attribute of justice, and it was depicted more than once, on more than one occasion, most notably for these purposes here, and that's because the ostrich was supposed to eat basically anything. So it was thought that they would eat food and even metal. So okay, you could argue that could be it could be a symbol of gluttony, but no, it was a symbol of, and actually there's an iconographer called Cesare Ripa, who was a 16th century iconographer. So he he was the guy that told everybody what everything meant in paintings back in the 16th century, and he put it this way. He said, "The ostrich ruminates its food as justice should the testimony put towards her." Okay, so ruminating on food. I mean, I guess you would ruminate quite a long time if you were trying to eat metal, wouldn't you? As justice does the case put before her. So I love that. There was another guy, Horapollo, who was an ancient, where was he from? He was from the 5th century. He was an author. And he noted that the ostrich's feathers were even all over its body. Like, really random. And so, like, basically the feathers were even, and so this also symbolized how justice should mete out the law, very, very evenly with impartiality. There you go. So who knew that the ostrich could be a symbol of justice? On that note, I'm going to leave you. So that was a lovely Themis. Let's stop sharing and turn comments back on very briefly. Yeah, justice, ostriches, scales, blindfolds, and really, really, really dodgy family. I can't say more than that, so I won't. I hope you enjoyed that. I will post on the Elevens's blog. This will be available to watch later on as well, on Instagram and on Facebook and on YouTube, which you can also access through the website beyondthepalette.co.uk. And actually, before I go, if any of you live anywhere near Bedford, which is just north of London, if you don't know where it is, if you don't know where it is, you probably don't live near there, I'm doing a live event in Bedford on the 18th of November. So anyone fancies a trip to Bedford the evening of the 18th of November, it's going to be really good fun. It's in a pub, a beautiful pub called the White Hart at Ampthill near Bedford. And I will be there, so you should be too. Okay, take care, have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week. Bye. Thanks for joining. Bye.